Industry experts confirm regulatory challenges affecting equitable access to medicine and healthcare products in Africa. This was raised at the World Local Production Forum in The Hague, Netherlands. So these experts have come for an urgent need to address the regulatory challenges affecting the equitable access to medicine and healthcare products in Africa today, citing conditions affecting the development of Africa's new public health order. To take this discussion further, we are joined via video link by Michael Mynhardt, CEO and co-founder of MMH and Partners Africa. Michael, good afternoon. Thanks for your time with us here on the SABC.
Good evening. Thank you very much for having me.
At this point, for those who've just tuned in and perhaps don't even know, what is the World Local Production Forum all about?
The World Local Production Forum really is just a conference that's hosted with the primary focus of understanding how do we stimulate the growth of the local production forum, in this case specifically focus on the healthcare sector, not just in Africa, but globally.
Thank you for that context. So on the back of that, we can begin to unpack the challenges affecting equitable access to medicine and healthcare products in a South African context. It's even extended to the continent at large.
Yeah, I think there's a number of challenges. One of the key topics that was discussed at the forum was the aspect of regulations. Depending on the country, depending on the continent that you're from, there might be some nuances in the regulatory standards. So ultimately, there was a big discussion around how do we improve regulatory harmonization and standardize the quality of medicine that we need throughout the world.
COVID-19 has laid bare the need for Africa's growth in manufacturing and even regulating its own medicine for Africa by Africa. How does Africa's new public health order assist in this regard? Is there a sufficient ecosystem?
Yeah, I think, the ultimate goal is to understand how do we achieve an industry where Africa is more self-sustainable. At the moment, there's a big dependence on foreign imports for healthcare products, and it causes a major security risk to the continent. So if you look at the items that you really want to focus on, it's always going to be the regulatory challenges, and that's to the effect of regulatory harmonization. It's going to be the actual infrastructure to build capacity on the continent, and it's going to be the offtakes and the demand side support that you would need from donor funders and from governments. So those elements really play into developing a more sustainable landscape to ultimately foster the local manufacturing of healthcare products on the continent.
So quality assurance also comes to the fore. Perhaps you could speak to the global benchmarking tools used to perhaps measure the maturity level of different regulatory authorities and really explain its impact and implications thereof.
Yeah, absolutely. So as it stands at the moment, the regulatory requirements are quite fragmented, and not just on the African continent, but internationally as well. One of the big areas in terms of the demand side that manufacturers are able to supply into is donor funders. And quite often you find that the regulatory requirements or the quality standards that the donor funders have is slightly different to what the local regulatory authorities might have. So there's big discussions around using a global benchmarking tool that's able to understand exactly what is the sophistication of a local regulatory authority, and then perhaps to use that global benchmarking tool to understand what maturity level do you determine this regulatory authority to be. And from there, you can then progress to have more donor funders recognize that standard as opposed to perhaps their own. So I think that's really a major challenge that we have at the moment, but there is really a clear path to perhaps how we can overcome that.
How would the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement also impact the workings and what's coming to the fore, given what's been unearthed in The Hague?
Yeah, the free trade agreement is really important because it ultimately assists in the supply chain of supplying local medicine to the region. When we speak about local manufacturing, it's not just for the country that it's produced in, but it's also for the region. And the free trade allows inter-country supply chain to become more seamless and to start decreasing those barriers that African continent countries have to supply each other with medicine as well.
Michael, thanks for your time with us on the SABC and for weighing in on that discussion. Michael Mynhardt, CEO and co-founder of MMH and Partners Africa, really just looking at World Local Production Forum 2023 that happened. Industry experts are confirming regulatory challenges affecting equitable access to medicine and healthcare products in Africa. Again, thank you, Michael, for his time with us here on the SABC.